The night was quiet. A cool wind moved through the dark forest. The moonlight fell on the road where a man named Daniel was driving his old truck. He was tired after a long day at work, but he liked driving at night. The silence gave him peace. But this night was different. As he drove past a lonely stretch of road, Daniel noticed something strange. A soft blue light flashed between the trees. At first he thought it was just a reflection or maybe hunters with lanterns, but then the light moved again, quick and sharp, like it was alive. Daniel slowed the truck. His heart beat a little faster. He stopped by the side of the road and turned off the engine. The forest was silent again, too silent. Not even the sound of crickets. He stepped out, his boots crunching against the gravel. The air smelled of rain and something else, something metallic, almost like burning wires. "Hello?" Daniel called softly. His voice felt too loud in the stillness, then he heard it, a faint sound, almost like a whimper. It was not human. It was soft, high-pitched, filled with fear. Daniel felt a chill on his skin. He followed the sound, moving carefully between the trees. The blue light grew stronger. His steps slowed when he saw a small figure curled up near a broken tree. At first he thought it was a child. But when the figure looked up, Daniel froze. Her eyes glowed faint green in the darkness. Her skin was pale, almost silver, with patterns like faint stars across her arms. Her hair shimmered faintly as if it held threads of light. It was not a human girl. The creature, no, the girl, stared at him with wide, frightened eyes. She tried to speak, but her words were broken. Strange sounds he had never heard. Daniel stepped back, his mind racing. Every part of him wanted to run, but the sound of her fear pulled at his heart. She lifted her hand. In her palm, a small hologram appeared, glowing in the air. It showed the image of a taller woman looking much like her with the same glowing eyes. The hologram flickered and faded. The girl let out a weak cry, then collapsed onto the ground. Daniel's chest tightened. She was just a child, lost and alone. He knelt down slowly, careful not to scare her more. "It's okay," he whispered, though he knew she could not understand his words. He reached out and checked her breathing. She was weak, trembling. Before he could think what to do, the forest around him changed. The blue light that first drew him here now spread wider, moving between the trees like searching eyes. The sound of metal hummed in the distance. A low mechanical drone like machines searching. Daniel looked around and felt danger pressing in on him. He knew in his gut, someone or something was hunting this girl. Quickly, Daniel lifted her in his arms. She was lighter than a human child, her body fragile but warm. He carried her back toward his truck, his eyes scanning the forest for movement. Behind him, he heard the sound of something large moving through the woods. Heavy steps, the breaking of branches. The humming grew louder. He reached the truck, opened the door, and laid her carefully on the seat. Her eyes flickered open for a moment, staring at him with silent trust, then closed again. Daniel gripped the steering wheel and started the engine. The old truck roared to life, echoing through the forest. At once, the blue lights in the trees turned toward him. He pressed the gas pedal. The tires spun on the dirt, then caught grip, speeding forward onto the empty road. The lights followed. In the side mirror, Daniel saw shapes moving between the trees, machines shining with the same blue glow, scanning the forest like hunters. The girl stirred weakly beside him. She whispered something in her strange language, voice full of fear and longing. Daniel didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was calling for her mother. His throat went dry. He was just an ordinary man living an ordinary life. He had no idea what this girl was or why she was here. But one thing was clear. She needed help. And right now, he was the only one who could give it. The truck raced through the night, the sound of the hunters fading slowly behind them. But Daniel knew it was not over. Whoever was searching for her would not stop. As the road stretched ahead into the darkness, Daniel's mind spun with questions. Who was this girl? Where was her mother? And why did he feel deep inside that his life had just changed forever? He looked at her again. Her small hands glowed faintly, holding onto the air as if reaching for someone who was not there. The image of the woman in the hologram flashed again in his memory. Daniel swallowed hard. He had no plan, no idea what to do, but he made a silent promise in that moment. He would protect her, no matter what came next. And then, just as he thought they had escaped, his phone rang. Daniel glanced at the screen. The number was blocked. His heart sank. He hesitated, then answered. A cold, mechanical voice spoke on the other end. Stay away from the girl, or you will never see another sunrise. The line went dead. Daniel's grip tightened on the wheel. He drove on, the night full of secrets and danger, unaware that his choice to help a lost alien child had already set his fate on a path he could never escape. The night stretched on, heavy with silence. Daniel drove fast, the wheels of his old truck racing over the lonely road. The alien girl lay on the seat beside him, breathing slowly, her small chest rising and falling. Daniel's thoughts were a storm. Who was she? Why were machines chasing her? And what did that strange voice on his phone mean? He wanted to believe it was just a nightmare, but the weight of the girl in his truck told him it was real. He looked at her again. Her glowing skin flickered faintly, as if her energy was fading. She was weak, fragile, a child, yet not a child of Earth. Daniel pressed harder on the gas pedal. He needed a safe place, at least for the night. His small cabin deep in the woods was the only option. No neighbors, no noise. If danger followed, maybe he could hide her there. The truck reached the gravel path leading into the forest. Daniel turned sharply, the headlights cutting through thick trees. After a long, rough drive, the cabin appeared, a lonely wooden house standing in the dark. He parked quickly and carried the girl inside. The cabin smelled of wood and old books. He placed her gently on the couch, then locked the door and pulled the curtains tight. For a moment, the silence returned. Only the crackle of the fireplace filled the room. Daniel knelt beside her. You're safe now, he whispered, though he wasn't sure if she could understand. The girl stirred. Her strange eyes blinked open. She lifted her hand again, and shapes of light formed in the air, symbols Daniel didn't understand. She moved her hand slowly, as if trying to speak through pictures. Daniel frowned, watching carefully. She drew a small circle, then another larger circle, and then she touched the small circle with her hand, pointing to herself. You, small circle, that's you, Daniel guessed softly. She blinked and gave a faint nod. Then she drew the larger circle, placed her hand on it, and her eyes filled with sadness. Daniel realized. Your mother? The girl's lips moved, a soft sound escaping. Mo. There, Daniel's chest tightened. She wasn't just lost, she was searching for her mother. Before he could say more, the air changed. A faint vibration shook the walls of the cabin. Daniel froze. Outside, through the cracks in the curtain, a blue light flashed again. Not one, many. The forest glowed with moving beams sweeping left and right like searching eyes. The machines had found them. Daniel's pulse jumped. He grabbed the girl's small hand and whispered, Quiet. He lifted her gently and moved quickly to the basement door. The old wooden steps creaked as he carried her down into the darkness. The basement was cold, filled with boxes and old tools. Daniel hid behind a large wooden shelf, holding her close. His breath came shallow, ears straining for every sound. Outside, the hum of machines grew louder. Metallic steps crushed branches. Something heavy moved across the porch. The wooden boards groaned under the weight. Then, silence. Daniel held his breath. The girl pressed her glowing hands against his chest, trembling. A sharp whirring noise filled the air. A beam of blue light passed across the basement window, scanning. The walls vibrated faintly. Daniel covered the girl's mouth gently, afraid her small gasps would be heard. The light stopped. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then suddenly, bang. The cabin door upstairs slammed open. Heavy steps echoed above. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest like a drum. Dust fell from the ceiling as the weight of the intruders shook the house. He could hear the sound of machines clicking, scanning, searching every corner. A cold, mechanical voice spoke in a language he did not understand. Daniel closed his eyes. He had no weapons, no plan. All he could do was stay hidden and pray they would leave. The footsteps grew closer to the basement door. The wooden handle rattled once, twice. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The girl clung to him, her small body shaking. Then, the footsteps stopped. A long silence followed. Daniel could feel sweat running down his back. The machines above made strange, low sounds like growls of metal. Then slowly the heavy steps retreated. The cabin door creaked again. The blue lights outside grew dimmer. The hum of machines faded back into the forest. Daniel exhaled sharply, his chest burning from holding his breath. They were gone. At least for now. The girl looked up at him with wide eyes, whispering one word, soft but clear. Danger? Daniel nodded. Yeah, big danger. He held her tighter. This was no longer just a mystery. Someone was hunting her, and now because he had chosen to help her, they were hunting him too. Daniel felt his phone vibrate again. His blood went cold. He pulled it out slowly, afraid of what he might see. The screen showed the same blocked number. He hesitated, then answered. The same cold voice spoke. You cannot protect her. Hand her over. Last warning, the line cut. Daniel's jaw clenched. He looked at the girl who was watching him with hopeful, desperate eyes. She trusted him even though she was not of this world. And Daniel realized something. He could not hand her over. He would not. No matter who hunted her, no matter what danger waited, he had made his choice. But outside, the forest glowed faintly again. The hunters had not gone far. They were waiting, and Daniel knew. The real chase had only just begun. The night dragged on. Daniel sat in the dark basement of his cabin, holding the strange alien girl close. The sounds of machines had faded into the forest, but his nerves stayed tight. Every creak of wood, every whisper of wind made him expect the hunters to return. The girl's faint glow lit the space around them. Her silver skin reflected the light like moonlit water. Daniel studied her carefully, wondering how a creature so fragile could be chased by such dangerous machines. After a long silence, she moved. Her glowing eyes looked up at him. With a trembling hand, she touched her chest and whispered, Lyra. Daniel blinked. Lyra, that's your name? She nodded weakly. Daniel gave a small smile. Lyra, okay, I'm Daniel. He pointed to himself. Daniel, the girl repeated slowly. Neil. Her voice was soft, broken, but clear enough to make his heart ache. For the first time, he saw her relax. Her trembling stopped. She trusted him at least a little. When dawn came, the basement was filled with a faint golden light. Daniel carried Lyra upstairs to the couch. He made her warm tea, though he wasn't sure if she could drink it. She touched the cup curiously, then looked back at him with questioning eyes. He smiled, took a sip to show her. Slowly, she copied him. The taste made her wrinkle her nose, but she managed a small laugh. The sound light and strange. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. She was just a child. An alien, yes, but still a child who missed her mother. Later, Lyra created light symbols again in the air. She drew a tall figure larger than herself and placed a glowing star between them. Daniel realized she was trying to show her mother again. She's close, isn't she? Daniel asked softly. Lyra nodded. Her glowing fingers trembled as she drew more symbols, circles, lines, arrows pointing across the air. Daniel didn't understand them, but he felt her urgency. She's here. On Earth, Daniel guessed. And you're trying to find her? Lyra's eyes shone. She gave a small nod. Daniel leaned back, running a hand through his hair. He had no map, no idea how to help. But looking at her hopeful face, he knew one thing. He couldn't leave her alone. As the sun rose higher, Daniel stepped outside to check the woods. The forest was quiet now, too quiet. No sign of machines, no glowing lights, but he felt watched. Every shadow seemed alive. He walked back inside and froze. His phone was buzzing on the table. The same blocked number. Daniel's gut twisted, but he answered. The voice was calm, sharp, and cold. We warned you, Daniel. The girl is not yours to protect. If you hand her over now, you will live. Refuse, and you will die with her. Daniel's hand shook with anger. Who are you? What do you want with her? The voice ignored his question. You cannot win. You are only human. The call ended. Daniel stared at the phone, fury burning in his chest. Only human. Maybe he was. But that didn't mean he would back down. That night, Daniel worked to make the cabin safer. He blocked windows, locked doors, and pulled out his old hunting rifle. Lyra watched him carefully, her glowing eyes filled with quiet understanding. When he sat down, exhausted, she came closer. She touched his wounded arm, the one still sore from the chase, and closed her eyes. A soft warmth spread through his body. The pain eased, the skin glowed faintly and then healed. Daniel gasped. You healed me. Lyra swayed, weak after using her power. Daniel caught her before she fell. You can't do that too much, he whispered. It hurts you, doesn't it? She gave a tired nod. But her eyes held something else, trust. She had given him her strength, even though she needed it herself. Daniel's throat tightened. She believed in him, and now he had to prove worthy of that belief. The night was quiet again, almost peaceful. Daniel began to think maybe, just maybe, they could rest for a while. He even allowed himself to close his eyes for a moment. But then, beep! Beep, beep! A sudden noise from outside made Daniel jump to his feet. He grabbed his rifle and rushed to the window. In the distance, black vans moved silently down the dirt road, headlights off. Men dressed in dark uniforms climbed out, carrying heavy weapons. Not machines this time, humans. Daniel's stomach dropped. They weren't neighbors. They weren't hunters from space. These were government agents. Lyra stood behind him, her eyes wide with fear. She seemed to recognize the danger even before he did. Daniel's mind raced. If both machines and humans wanted her, then this was bigger than he ever imagined. He turned to Lyra. "Stay low. Don't make a sound." The van stopped. Soldiers spread out, moving through the trees toward the cabin. Daniel tightened his grip on the rifle, his heart pounding. He had chosen to protect her. But now the whole world seemed ready to take her away. Through the silence of the night, one sound grew louder, the steady crunch of boots on gravel. Moving closer, closer, and then came the sharp knock at his door. Bang! Bang, bang. A deep voice called out, cold and commanding. "Open the door, Daniel. We know you have her." The pounding on the cabin door echoed through the night. Bang! Bang, bang. "Daniel, open the door!" the deep voice shouted. Lyra pressed herself against the wall, her glowing eyes full of fear. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, rifle in his hands, sweat dripping down his face. He had survived hunters from the sky, but these were men, trained, armed, and close. He whispered to her, "Stay here. Don't move." Daniel crept to the door, his boots silent on the wooden floor. He peeked through the small crack in the curtain. At least 6 men stood outside, all dressed in black armor, rifles ready. Their vans glowed faintly under the moonlight. They knew. They had tracked him here. Daniel's heart pounded. He couldn't fight them all. But he also couldn't hand Lyra over. The knocking stopped. Silence fell, then crash. The door burst open, splinters flying across the room. Daniel stumbled back as soldiers stormed inside, weapons raised. "Get down," one shouted. Daniel fired a warning shot into the ceiling. The loud boom filled the cabin. Dust rained down. The soldiers ducked, but quickly aimed their guns back at him. Before Daniel could pull the trigger again, Lyra cried out. Her small hands glowed bright white. Symbols of light swirled in the air around her like spinning stars. The room shook with strange energy. The soldiers froze, staring in shock. Then the lights exploded outward in a pulse. Every gun in the room clicked, then fell silent. The rifles jerked in their owners' hands, their power drained, wires sparking. The men cursed, slapping at their weapons, trying to bring them back to life. Daniel's eyes widened. Lyra had disabled them without touching anything. "Move!" Daniel shouted. He grabbed Lyra's hand and ran toward the back door. The soldiers recovered quickly, shouting orders. "Don't let them escape." Daniel kicked open the back door, pulling Lyra with him. The 2 of them sprinted into the trees. Branches whipped against Daniel's arms as he pushed through the dark forest, heart hammering. Behind him, flashlights cut through the night. Men shouted, chasing close. Lyra stumbled, her small legs struggling to keep up. Daniel scooped her into his arms and ran faster, his breath burning in his chest. They reached a rocky clearing, the moon bright above them. Daniel ducked behind a fallen log, trying to catch his breath. Lyra's hands still glowed faintly, but her eyes were heavy with exhaustion. Daniel whispered, "What did you do back there?" "Those guns, they just died." Lyra blinked slowly. She raised her small hand and pointed to her head. Then she touched the broken radio clipped to Daniel's belt. With a flick of light, it sparked and came alive, static buzzing through the speaker. Daniel stared. "You control machines," she nodded weakly. Daniel's mind spun. No wonder the hunters wanted her. No wonder the government was here. A child with the power to shut down technology with her thoughts. She was more dangerous and more valuable than anything on Earth. But she was still just a girl. Daniel clenched his jaw. "Don't worry. I won't let them take you." Suddenly a flashlight beam swept over the clearing. Voices shouted, "Over here." Daniel cursed under his breath. He lifted Lyra again and ran toward the mountains, the shouts growing louder behind him. Bullets cracked through the air, splintering trees, spraying dirt. One grazed his shoulder. Daniel grunted in pain but didn't slow down. Lyra raised her glowing hand and the soldiers' radios shrieked with static. Flashlights flickered, some went dark. Confusion spread among the men. Daniel used the chance to slip deeper into the forest. Finally, he reached a hidden cave at the base of the mountain. He ducked inside, breath ragged, and placed Lyra gently on the ground. The cave was damp and cold, but safe for the moment. Daniel tore a strip of cloth from his shirt and pressed it against his bleeding shoulder. Pain throbbed through him. Lyra crawled closer, her small hands glowing faintly again. She pressed them against his wound. Warmth spread through his body. The pain easing, the skin closing. Daniel exhaled slowly. You saved me again. But Lyra looked weaker than before. Her glow flickered, dimmer now like a candle burning out. Daniel's chest tightened. Don't use it too much. You'll hurt yourself. Lyra rested her head against his arm, her eyes closing. For the first time, Daniel saw her as more than just an alien. She was a child who trusted him completely, and that trust gave him strength. As the night stretched on, Daniel stayed awake, listening to every sound outside the cave. He knew the soldiers would not stop searching, and the machines, the hunters from the sky, would return soon too. He looked at Lyra's sleeping face. She had powers beyond anything he could understand, but she also had a heart. She missed her mother. She trusted him, and she needed him. Daniel made a silent promise. I'll find her. I'll help you. The moment he whispered those words, Lyra stirred in her sleep. A faint image appeared in the air above her, a glowing star map. It shifted slowly, pointing toward a place deep in the mountains. Daniel's eyes widened. Is that where your mother is? The map faded. Lyra slept again, breathing softly. Daniel leaned back against the cold stone wall, staring into the darkness of the cave. He now had a direction, a clue. But the path ahead would be filled with enemies, human and alien. And his strength alone might not be enough. Outside, faint blue lights began to flicker between the trees. The hunters had returned. The cave was dark and cold. Daniel sat against the stone wall, his rifle resting on his lap. Beside him, Lyra slept, her small body glowing faintly. The map she had shown, the glowing stars pointing to the mountains, was still clear in his mind. Somewhere out there, her mother was alive, but outside the cave, danger waited. Blue lights flickered through the trees. The hunters had returned, and the soldiers with their black vans and rifles would not be far behind. Daniel's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. He was just a man. No armor, no machines, no secret powers. Just a man with a rifle and a choice. He looked down at Lyra. Her small hand was curled around his sleeve, holding on even in her sleep. Trust. That was what she gave him. And that trust lit something inside him stronger than fear. Daniel whispered to himself, I'll get you to your mother. I swear it. At dawn, Daniel left the cave to scout the area. The forest was wet with dew, the air sharp and cold. He moved carefully, watching the trees. For hours he saw nothing. No soldiers, no machines. But when he returned, Lyra was awake. She stood at the cave entrance, staring at the rising sun. Her eyes glowed brighter than before, filled with hope. Daniel smiled faintly. Beautiful, isn't it? Lyra tilted her head, not understanding his words, but she smiled back. Then she touched her chest and whispered, Mother. Daniel nodded. Yes, we'll find her. The journey began. Daniel carried a backpack with food, water, and his rifle. Lyra walked beside him, though he often lifted her when the ground grew too rough. Together they moved through the mountains, following the direction of the star map she had shown. The path was not easy. Rocks cut his boots, the climb tore at his muscles. His shoulder still ached from the bullet wound, though Lyra had healed it partly. Yet he kept going. He had no map, no clear plan, but his determination pushed him forward. At night, they rested by small fires. Daniel told her stories in simple words, though she probably understood little. He spoke of his childhood, his father teaching him to fish, his mother's warm cooking. Lyra listened quietly, her eyes wide as if she could feel the meaning even without the words. And sometimes she would show him images with her glowing hands, pictures of her world. Tall towers of silver, skies filled with two suns, fields that shimmered like glass. A place beautiful and strange. Daniel realized something then. This was not just about her. This was about him too. He was seeing a universe larger than anything he had imagined. And for the first time in years, he felt alive. But danger was never far. One night, as they camped near a river, Lyra suddenly stiffened. Her eyes glowed brighter, fear flashing across her face. She pointed to the water. Daniel froze. Ripples moved across the river, though no wind blew. Then a shadow rose from the water. A machine, tall and skeletal, with glowing blue eyes. It stepped onto the shore, water dripping from its metal limbs. Daniel raised his rifle and fired. The bullet sparked against the machine's chest, but did little. The hunter turned its head toward him, eyes burning. Lyra cried out, her small hands glowing. The machine jerked, wires sparking, but it kept moving forward. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Run, Lyra!" But she didn't run. Instead, she pressed both glowing hands toward the machine. Energy pulsed from her, stronger than before. The machine froze in place, its metal body shaking violently. Then, crash! The hunter exploded into pieces, smoke and fire lighting the riverbank. Daniel shielded Lyra with his body from the blast. When the smoke cleared, he looked at her in shock. You're stronger than before." But Lyra fell to her knees, weak and pale. The glow in her skin dimmed. Daniel rushed to her side, lifting her gently. "You can't keep doing this," he whispered. "It's killing you." Lyra looked at him with tired eyes and whispered, "Safe." Daniel's heart ached. She wasn't thinking of herself, she was thinking of him. The next day, Daniel pushed them harder, moving deeper into the mountains. Every step was heavier, every sound sharper. He knew the soldiers would see the smoke from the destroyed machine. They would be close now. At sunset, they reached a rocky ledge. From there, Daniel could see a valley below, flat land filled with strange antennas and metallic towers. Lights blinked across the base. Trucks moved like ants, and at the very center, a large dome of steel. Lyra gasped. She pointed again and again, her eyes filled with desperate hope. "Mother!" Daniel stared at the dome. His gut twisted. If her mother was there, she was being held prisoner. The place looked like a fortress. He lowered his rifle slowly. How could one man with one child break into something like that? Before he could think further, the sound of a helicopter cut through the sky. He pulled Lyra back against the rocks just as a black aircraft roared above, searchlights sweeping the valley. Daniel clenched his jaw. They were trapped between mountains and the base. Lyra looked at him, tears in her glowing eyes. She whispered again, "Mother." Daniel felt his throat tighten. Fear clawed at him, but something stronger burned inside. He couldn't turn back. "Not now." He touched her shoulder gently. "We'll get her out. I promise." But even as he said it, the rumble of engines filled the valley. Black vans were climbing the mountain road. Soldiers were coming, surrounding them, and Daniel realized the real fight was about to begin. The night air was sharp and cold. Daniel crouched behind the rocky ledge, staring at the valley below. The hidden base spread wide under the moonlight. Towers, antennas, guards, and that steel dome in the center. Somewhere inside that dome, Lyra's mother was being held. Lyra stood beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the dome. Her small hands trembled, not with fear this time, but with hope. She whispered again, "Mother." Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her it would be easy, but he couldn't lie. Breaking into that place was madness. Guards patrolled in groups, searchlights scanned every inch, and machines crouched like metallic beasts near the gates. But Daniel had already made his choice. He squeezed Lyra's shoulder. "We'll get her." No matter what, they waited until midnight. The guards changed shifts, the spotlights moved slower, and the valley grew quieter. Daniel studied the patterns, memorizing the blind spots. He led Lyra down the mountain slope, moving silently through shadows. They crawled under fences, slipped between patrols, and hugged the walls. Daniel's heart pounded at every step. One mistake and they'd both be caught. At last they reached the dome. The steel walls loomed over them, smooth and cold. Daniel searched for a way inside. There were no doors, only a single locked gate guarded by 2 armed men. Daniel cursed under his breath. He had no time to fight, but Lyra touched his arm, her glowing fingers pointing at the gate. Her eyes hardened with determination. Daniel shook his head. "No, Lyra, you're too weak." But she stepped forward anyway. Her hands lifted, glowing brighter than ever. The air around them buzzed with strange energy. The lock on the gate sparked, then melted. The guards' weapons flickered uselessly in their hands. Daniel didn't wait. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her through the gate before the guards could shout for help. Inside the dome, the air was heavy with heat and electricity. Machines lined the walls, humming like angry bees, and in the center, suspended in a glass chamber, was a tall figure. Lyra gasped, her voice breaking with joy and fear. "Mother!" Daniel's eyes widened. The woman inside the chamber was weak but alive. Her silver skin shimmered faintly, her eyes closed. Tubes and wires were connected to her, draining her strength. Lyra ran forward, pressing her glowing hands against the glass. "Mother!" The woman's eyes opened slowly, glowing faint green like her daughter's. She saw Lyra and lifted a trembling hand against the glass. Daniel felt a lump in his throat. They had found her. But getting her out would be harder. Alarms blared suddenly. Red lights flashed across the dome. The melted gate must have triggered the system. Daniel cursed. "They know we're here." The glass chamber lowered slowly into the floor. Guards rushed into the dome from all sides. Daniel raised his rifle and fired, the sound echoing. Bullets sparked off metal walls, guards ducked, shouting orders. "Stay behind me," Daniel yelled, shielding Lyra with his body. Lyra cried out, her hands glowing again. The machines along the wall sparked and shut down. Lights flickered, alarms screeched, and weapons jammed in soldiers' hands. But the effort drained her. Her knees buckled and she fell to the ground. Daniel fired again, hitting a soldier's shoulder, forcing the others to scatter. He grabbed Lyra and dragged her toward the lowering chamber. "Come on, we can't lose her!" He reached the control panel. Buttons glowed with strange symbols, none he understood. He slammed his hand against them anyway. Nothing happened. Lyra crawled forward weakly, touching the panel with her glowing hand. The machine groaned, sparks flying. Slowly, the glass chamber rose back up. Inside, her mother pressed her hand against the glass once more. Daniel's heart leapt, but then froze. The dome shook violently. A deep metallic roar filled the chamber. From the far wall, a massive door slid open. Smoke and sparks poured out, and then it appeared. The alien hunter. It was taller than any man, its body black metal covered in scars of battle. Blue fire burned in its eyes. Its arms ended in blades sharp and cruel. Daniel's blood ran cold. This was no simple machine. This was the one chasing them since the forest. The true enemy. The soldiers stopped firing. Even they backed away, afraid of the thing they could not control. The hunter stepped forward, scanning the dome. Its voice boomed, cold and merciless. "Return the child," Lyra whimpered, clutching Daniel's arm. Her glow flickered with fear. Daniel stood in front of her, his rifle shaking in his hands. He knew bullets would be useless. He knew he was only human, but he also knew one thing. He couldn't step aside. He set his jaw, raised his weapon, and whispered, "You'll have to go through me." The hunter's eyes flared brighter, its steps shaking the dome floor, and in that moment, Daniel realized this fight would decide everything. The dome shook with the heavy steps of the alien hunter. Its towering body glowed with blue fire, blades gleaming in the red alarm light. Soldiers who had once chased Daniel now backed away, their faces pale with fear. Daniel stood alone in front of it, rifle in his hands, heart pounding like a drum. Behind him, Lyra clung to his sleeve, her glowing eyes wide with terror. In the chamber, her mother pressed weakly against the glass, desperate but trapped. The hunter's voice was cold and final. "The child must return. Humanity has no claim." Daniel swallowed hard. He was only a man, no powers, no machines, nothing but courage. He knew his rifle would do little against this monster. But he also knew something else. He couldn't let Lyra be taken. He lifted the weapon and fired. The bullet sparked against the hunter's chest, bouncing harmlessly. The creature didn't even flinch. It took another step forward, the ground trembling beneath its weight. Daniel's hands shook, but he fired again and again, each shot useless. The hunter raised one blade arm, swinging down with deadly force. Daniel dove, pulling Lyra with him, the blade cutting deep into the floor where they had stood. Sparks flew. The hunter roared, swinging again. Daniel rolled, his shoulder slamming against the control panel. Pain burst through him, but he didn't stop. He shoved Lyra toward cover. "Stay down!" The hunter advanced, its burning eyes locked on the girl. Daniel's lungs burned as he stood again. He grabbed a fallen soldier's grenade and pulled the pin. He hurled it at the hunter's chest. Boom! Smoke and fire swallowed the dome. The force knocked Daniel backward. His ears rang, his chest ached. He scrambled up, coughing through the haze. Through the smoke, the hunter still stood. Damaged, yes, parts of its armor cracked and smoking, but still alive. Still unstoppable, Daniel's knees weakened. He had nothing left. No more bullets, no more strength. Lyra crawled toward him, her small hands glowing faintly. She pressed them against his chest, trying to heal him again. But she was too weak. Her glow flickered and dimmed. "No," Daniel whispered. He pushed her hands down gently. "Save your strength. Don't waste it on me." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She whispered one word, broken but clear. "Father." The sound pierced Daniel's heart. He wasn't her father, but in her eyes he had become one, and that gave him strength greater than fear. The hunter raised its blades again, ready to strike. Daniel stood tall, no weapon left, nothing but his body between Lyra and death. "You want her?" he shouted. "You'll have to kill me first." The hunter paused, as if surprised by his defiance. At that moment, the chamber holding Lyra's mother cracked. Sparks flew across the glass. She pressed her glowing hands against the inside, sending a wave of energy through the machines. The hunter turned its head toward her, distracted for a split second. Daniel seized the chance. He grabbed a steel pipe from the wreckage and charged, slamming it into the hunter's cracked chest plate with all his strength. The impact sent shockwaves through Daniel's arms. The hunter staggered back one step, its blue fire flickering. "Lyra!" Daniel shouted. "Now!" The girl's hands blazed with light brighter than ever before. She screamed, releasing all her power. The hunter froze, electricity sparking across its body. Its glowing eyes dimmed as Lyra's energy tore through it. The creature roared, its voice shaking the dome, then collapsed to the floor with a thunderous crash. The ground shook. Silence followed. Smoke rose from the hunter's broken body. Its lights went dark. Daniel dropped the pipe, his hands trembling. His chest burned with exhaustion. He looked at Lyra, who had fallen to her knees, her glow nearly gone. He rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. "You did it," he whispered. "You saved us." With the hunter destroyed, the machines in the dome went dark. The glass chamber hissed and opened. Lyra's mother stumbled forward, weak but alive. She fell to her knees, wrapping her arms around her daughter. Lyra's eyes shone with tears as she whispered, "Mother." Daniel stepped back, watching the reunion. His throat tightened. He had risked everything to bring them together, and now it was done. But something was different. A faint light pulsed in his chest. When Lyra had touched him with her power, some of it had stayed inside him. He felt warmth spreading through his veins, something not human. Lyra's mother looked at him with tired but knowing eyes. She spoke in her language, words he didn't understand, but her meaning was clear. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture of respect. Daniel shook his head. "I'm just a man. I only did what anyone should do." But deep inside, he knew it wasn't true. Many would have walked away. Many would have handed the girl over. He hadn't. He had fought, bled, and nearly died for someone not even from his world. And that choice had changed everything. Outside, the base burned. Soldiers fled into the night, their machines silent. The world would soon learn of what had happened here. But Daniel knew his life was no longer ordinary. Lyra and her mother prepared to leave. Their bodies glowed brighter, forming strange patterns of light. A ship, hidden beneath the earth, rose with a low hum. Lyra turned to Daniel one last time. She touched his chest where the faint light pulsed inside him. Her eyes shone with sadness and gratitude. "Forever, family." Daniel felt his heart twist. He wanted to stop her, to keep her safe, but he knew she belonged with her mother among the stars. The ship lifted into the sky, vanishing into the night. Daniel stood alone in the silence, the faint alien glow still burning inside him. He whispered to himself, "Nothing will ever be the same." And he was right, for Daniel was no longer just a man. He was the human who stood against the impossible, the human who proved that courage, love, and spirit could change the fate of worlds.